Hi. Um, I'm often asked why I risked escaping Syria and why I filmed my journey and why do I keep speaking about refugees topics. Today I would like to answer some of these questions. But first, I want to say that I am very happy to be here and to have been asked to share my story and to speak again at this platform. I would like to thank Josephine Goop and Mike Butcher for inviting me again. I came to Austria as a refugee in 2016. The journey of leaving my country was the first step, and adapting to my new home was the second. When I first arrived there, we had to take integration courses. It was almost compulsory. I remember the teacher telling us that we should not forget where we came from and that we should keep our values and then contribute with them to our new homes. She gave us the example of tea and water, how tea adds value to the water. We were the tea and the Austrian community was the water. But for me, integration was very difficult at the beginning because of the isolation and the prejudice. For almost 1 year, all I did was learning the language, but when you're isolated, as many refugees are, it is incredibly difficult to do so. And starting your life from scratch is not easy at all. When I first arrived there, I didn't know anyone but some of the refugees that I met in some of the camps. It is very difficult to know that locals look at you as something so different from them just because you come from a different part of the world. Well, I'm not different, I know that. And other than the language, actually, I like to think that we are very similar to each other. But I do understand the concerns and the fears of the locals that their life and their lifestyle and their countries would change if they accept too many new people. But because in Austria, as elsewhere, we hear politicians always complaining about the integration of refugees. But for newcomers to integrate and to contribute to their new homes, they need to be allowed to integrate. They need to be embraced in everyday life, in everyday costumes, cultures, and the language. And not to be isolated with other refugees where they can't do anything and they can't learn the language and they can't adapt to the new place that they're in now. Most refugees, they desperately want to do that and they just want to dive into their new homes. But, and actually, one can only build an identity if it's accepted. When you are perceived as something threatening and as a stranger, the only outcome of this is an identity that is half-built, broken, and is met by rejection from the host country. I have been enterprising myself and integrating into the Austrian life. I've learned German, I found a job, and while I had trauma, it did not stall my progress. Actually, circumstances did. More than anything in the world, I want to go to university. I always felt that this would be my stepping stone into a normal life. And I gradually actually understood that my passion for university meant more than an education to me. It meant winning my fight over feelings of powerlessness for everything that I have been robbed of. And while reflecting on that, I became aware of how often we only value things after we lose them. When you lose a great deal of what you were used to, of what you used to have, you learn to settle for very small things, like being accepted, when you know it is your human right to be accepted. Integrating into a new society was not easy at all. At first, I needed to I needed help building my resilience in an environment that I had very little influence at. I wanted, I wanted to find friends, and which was a long-term struggle for me. I had strong views that were often seen as controversial in my country, especially about being a feminist. I was always mocked by my Syrian friends, which infuriated me. But part of my developing self began to recognize that my beliefs are fundamental to who I am, and I will not change them or compromise them in order to have friends. My story is familiar in the sense that you might have heard it, seen it so many other times. So many people have tried to escape the war and died and are still dying. And as a survivor, as survivors in general, we feel the guilt all the time. If I see, for example, if I see a child who had just died, I would always think, why her and why not me? How come she's safe and I'm not? We are torn apart between this primitive instinct of surviving and living in safety and between that other voice that questions our very right to be safe when the ones that we love the most are not. It became clear to me that my sense of identity had multiple facets that were operating in different circumstances. There was the version of me who had an immense confidence, who liked to speak, and who wanted to do good, who wanted to change the world. The one that doing good made me feel that I'm not a stranger anymore and no one is looking at me as an outsider. We want the same rights and normal life of any human being. We don't want to be a victim refugee. I feel that these labels strip you away and they turn you into something or someone who doesn't have anything else. My identity is uniquely my own and mine to describe. Ask me if you want to know about it. I want more than safety. We want more than safety. We want all the rights that every single one of you enjoy. We want an education, work, the feeling of being a normal human being. And we are both fighters and victims of events over which we had no control. And the refugee identity is a powerless one, is a weak one, not an empowering one. It is more like telling people, you will always be limited to the identity of a victim. And that's a dangerous way to describe someone. In reaction to all that I have said, I decided to rebel against those feelings and those labels. And I decided to take the path of journalism. I've always wanted to become a doctor because I thought it's so heroic and noble to save someone's life. And it is. But through my journey and through seeing that the voices of many young people and people in general is being dismissed in the media, I was sure that journalism is just as heroic. So now I work with a Swiss NGO. It's called Terre des Hommes. And we run an initiative called Living Together, where it's a platform for the young people and by the young people that seeks providing a way for those people to share their voices, to raise their opinions, and to express what they think about migration, cultural inclusion, and living together with people from all backgrounds. And we wish to provide a different source of information. I interview refugees as well as host communities, locals, and we share that on the platform and the social media. Okay, I've talked too much. In the end, I would like to say that whether we're politicians, NGOs, journalists, or refugees, We need to help illuminating the realities that refugees are battling with every single day. And I call upon you to build new narratives which can help building bridges, especially when we see governments like Austria and France trying to build borders between people. Thank you.